Hello friends, I am Dr. Vivek Kumar. I am working as a senior consultant neurologist with Metro Group of Hospitals in Noida, and today I am going to discuss a very important aspect of management of epilepsy patients, that is management of drug resistant epilepsy. This constitutes a very important subset of patients of epilepsy who continue to have seizures despite being taking adequate amount of drugs, and they are a cause of lot of concern to the family besides being a cause of concern to the treating neurologist as well as physicians. Now, if we see, the epilepsy is a common disease which affects around 50 million people worldwide and 80% of these patients live in a developing world. There are 15 to 61 cases of new onset epilepsy per lakh people every year, and in most of the developed countries the incidence range between 40 to 70 people per 1 lakh population, while in the developing countries it is between 100 to 190 per lakh population. Now in India we see it around 40 to 50 people per lakh population, but in India the cases of epilepsy are highly underreported because of the vast amount of stigma, social stigma attached to this disease. And because of this disease, social stigma, many people living in the rural India are not coming up and seeking medical attention. So the actual incidence may be much higher than what we could study in various studies. In India, it is considered the second commonest chronic neurological disorder after headache, and it is estimated that there are more than 10 million people of epilepsy in India. Now broadly we can classify epilepsy into three common groups. One is generalized seizures, partial seizures, and difficult to classify or unclassified seizures. Now among the generalized seizures we can have absence seizures, myoclonic seizures, clonic seizures, tonic-clonic seizures, and atonic or tonic seizures. Now these are, depending on the various kinds of presentations, we can have these kinds of epileptic fits. Then partial epilepsy can further be classified into simple or complex partial seizure. Simple when there is only motor activity of a particular part of the body, and complex when these activities are associated with alteration of consciousness. Secondary generalized when the one part of the body shows any motor activity which spreads to whole of the body, then it is a secondary generalized tonic-clonic seizures. Now then there is another way to classify. International Epilepsy Society has classified into various kinds of epilepsies and epilepsy syndromes, and broadly again into three types: generalized epilepsy, which can be symptomatic or idiopathic. Symptomatic, there are examples like West syndrome or Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and symptom related or idiopathic, in which the underlying cause is not known, like childhood absence epilepsy, juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, juvenile absence epilepsies. Then partial epilepsies could be again symptomatic when there is a lesion associated in the brain which is a cause of these seizures, or they can be idiopathic when despite partial onset of symptoms there could not be any cause identified. Then there are various epilepsies which cannot be classified into either generalized or partial, and they have been called various unclassified epilepsies, which include patients of febrile seizures, newborn seizures, those who present first time as a status epilepticus, then various occasional situational seizures like alcohol related seizures, like seizures in various metabolic derangements like hyponatremia, hypocalcemia. All these patients can have seizures, but they resolve once we correct the underlying pathology. So these are various unclassifiable epilepsies. Now broadly, if we see the outcome of the epilepsy as far as the response to treatment is concerned, then we can broadly group or classify into four major groups the various epilepsies. Number one is benign epilepsy, which constitutes around 20 to 30% of these patients, which undergo remission after a few years. They are age related phenomena. So with passage of time, with advancement of age, these epilepsies remit on their own even if they are not treated. Now common example is benign epilepsy with centrotemporal spikes, and second is benign occipital epilepsies. Now these are the syndromes which occur in childhood, and as the child grows, these epilepsies remit on their own even if we don't treat. Then second is the group which is known as pharmacosensitive epilepsies. Pharmacosensitive epilepsies are the epilepsies in which the seizures respond very well to the treatment, and once there is a seizure free period of 2 to 3 years, and if we withdraw the treatment, then the people go in spontaneous remission, so they do not recur. So this constitutes a good response to treatment, and that is why it is known as pharmacosensitive epilepsy. The third group is pharmacodependent. Pharmacodependent means once the treatment is started, then as long as the patient is on the anti-epileptic treatment, the seizures remain under control, and once these drugs, if we try to withdraw, the seizures recur. So they have to take these medicines lifelong, and the common example is juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, which starts in adolescence and we have to treat them lifelong. So that is pharmacodependent epilepsy. Then the fourth, which is the most important thing, and that which is a cause of concern to every treating neurologist, is a pharmacoresistant or refractory epilepsy, which carries a poor prognosis, and despite appropriate prolonged treatment with all the appropriate anti-epileptic therapies, we are not able to adequately control these types of epilepsies. So if we see, if a new untreated patients, if we see there was a study which examined 470 patients with recent onset epilepsy, newly diagnosed epilepsy, it was found that around 47% of these patients respond to the first drug. That is, if we add the number one drug, appropriate drug, then 47% of the patients are likely to respond to this drug, and the remaining, if we add the second drug, then another 13% patients will respond to this second drug combination. But beyond this, if we add another third drug, then only 4% group can further respond to these combination therapies. And there is large number which is 36% in this study, which found to have resistant epilepsy, that despite 2 to 3 drug combination, we are still not able to treat appropriately these patients. So what is a drug resistant epilepsy? How can we define it? The internationally accepted definition is a failure of adequate trial of 2 or more tolerated drugs. Tolerated means that there is no significant side effect. Appropriately chosen means that the drug which has been chosen is the number one or drug of choice for that kind of epilepsy. Appropriately used, you have to use these drugs in appropriate dosage. Sometimes the dosage is inadequate, then the response is inappropriate. So it should be, the drug should be well tolerated, they should be appropriately chosen, they should be appropriately used in appropriate doses. And despite if this is done with various anti-epileptic drug trials, if we are not able to achieve drug or seizure freedom, then that is what we label as drug resistant epilepsy. And why it is important to know about this subset of group? Because these patients of drug resistant epilepsy have a higher risk of premature death, injuries, psychosocial dysfunction, and reduced quality of life. Now, can we predict in a newly onset diagnosed epilepsy, can we have any predictors on basis of which we can say that these are the patients who may respond poorly to drugs? So a study tried to evaluate 6 factors, which included family history of epilepsy, febrile seizure, traumatic brain injury, psychiatric comorbidity, any history of recreational drug use, and 10 or more seizures before the onset of treatment. So if we have evaluate these 6 parameters or factors, then of them most important predictors for failure to therapy was traumatic brain injury, recreational drug use, and 10 or more seizures. So if you have more and more seizures before starting treatment, the chances of failure are more. History of traumatic brain injury, again the chance of failure more. Psychiatric comorbidity, chances of poor response to therapy. Then history of febrile seizure and psychiatric comorbidity and family history of seizures, they have a little less predictive value, but they are also important. Then if we evaluate further in patients with newly diagnosed epilepsy by syndromic classifications, various kinds of syndromes as I have told that there could be idiopathic epilepsy, there could be cryptogenic epilepsy, there could be symptomatic epilepsy. Now if we evaluate these three groups, then it has been found that the symptomatic epilepsy group has a higher chance of failure to therapy, and the same is with the cryptogenic group. The cryptogenic group also has been found to have a higher chance of failure, while idiopathic epilepsies respond reasonably well to various anti-epileptic regimens. Now then, what can be the mechanism, what could be the cause why these failures of drug to these patients? There are three important mechanisms which have been proposed as a cause of drug resistance. One is that the failure of drugs reaching their targets, and it has been found that there is an overexpression of multi-drug efflux transporters at the epileptic focus, and this has been found mainly in the capillary endothelium cells, in which there are multiple overexpression of drug transporters, and as a result the drug doesn't reach or doesn't cross the blood brain barrier, and once if it is not crossing the blood brain barrier, naturally the effect, anti-epileptic effect, doesn't manifest. So if the failure of drugs to reach the target is could be an important underlying reason. Second could be alteration of drug targets. Now we all know that various anti-epileptic drugs act by combining with various targets, which are known as various channels like sodium channel, calcium channel, potassium channel, GABA receptors, NMDA receptors. So all these receptors, if they are modified while the patient is on various drug regimens, to the extent that these drugs are not able to combine appropriately with these targets, and as a result they are not able to have their effects. The third could be the targets are altered by formation of autoantibodies. This has been found in various patients of encephalitis, in which the autoantibodies form against the various ion channels like sodium channels, and as a result the drugs are not able to act. Now what could be the features of true drug resistance? The various studies have found that at least 1/3 of the patients of epilepsy, even treated appropriately, constitute drug resistant and do not show or continue to develop seizures despite therapy. And this is more commonly seen in those with partial epilepsy, and also more common in those having learning disability. And those who fail to respond to two drugs, adding more drugs do not help, and it has been found only 4 to 5% patients who may be able to respond after adding a third drug. So more than two drugs, adding another drug is usually doesn't help, and these are the patients in whom one should always have the early referral to epilepsy specialist or a neurologist who is working with on epilepsy, so that they can be appropriately evaluated and managed. Then there could be pseudo resistance to anti-epileptic drug therapy. Pseudo resistance means the patient can respond, but because of certain reasons he fails to respond. So what could be the reasons why this pseudo resistance manifests? This could be wrong diagnosis. Patient is not of epilepsy and still we are treating with anti-epileptic medications. Obviously the response cannot be there, because the patients could have recurrent syncopal attacks, neurocardiogenic or vasovagal syncope. If we treat them with anti-epileptic medications, they will not respond, because syncope is very different from an epileptic fit. So proper diagnosis, proper history taking is very important in these patients. Then cardiac arrhythmias. If we have sick sinus syndrome, various kind of tachy or bradyarrhythmias can cause loss of consciousness, sometimes can be associated with tonic-clonic movement, sometimes with urinary incontinence, and they can manifest with similar kind